Hey guys, this is Eckhart Slaughter. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars video, and today we will be talking about the High Republic, with full spoilers, or at least some spoilers for the first novel, Light of the Jedi. I'm going to try not to go into any major specifics, but I do want to talk about the overall way the book is structured and what opportunities there are moving forward, so I think by necessity, I may get into some spoiler territory. Also, because we are talking about a book, I've just put some gameplay footage for you guys to watch, but as always with these types of videos, you might just want to play a game yourself or do something else and just listen along. Alright, so the High Republic, the newest era of Star Wars storytelling, has officially launched with the release, most prominently, of Light of the Jedi and many other little bits of media. I think there's some comics out now, a young adult novel is coming out soon. They're really digging deep into the universe, and we've actually learned that the High Republic realistically could be the next major aspect of storytelling, at least EU storytelling. It's never going to compare to something like The Mandalorian for perhaps the next 10 years. Right now, we're only in phase 1 of the High Republic. There are 3 phases announced right now. The first phase itself will take place over the next few years, so there's lots of storytelling to happen here. But that all hinges on the High Republic being successful. And now that the first book is out and we've got some information, and I have also developed my opinion on the quality of the story, now is a good time to talk about future success and try to anticipate the trajectory for the High Republic. Now, I'm not going to be talking about SJWs or internal strife within Lucasfilm. You can find other videos that do that. I just want to look at some of the facts and mix that with my impressions. So let's get started. And by the way, I will say as well, I did a full breakdown of the High Republic, my review of it, with Corey from Corey Loses as part of our podcast, TapCaf Transmission, so I'll also link that below. We go into the book for some detail for about an hour and a half. And if you guys want to know what I rated it at the end, I gave it a C. Not high on the list, certainly the lower tier of Star Wars books that I've read, but there are some important caveats which we'll have to discuss. Before we do that though, I want to look at sales. How well did this first book do in terms of sales? Did it flop? Because that would be a good indicator of how things are going, and it turns out that no. The High Republic has apparently sold very, very well. In fact, in week 1, it's topped the New York Times bestseller list, and when I checked Amazon, it was also #1 in books. So I find that interesting, especially the Amazon one, which tracks pretty much every book ever sold. So often you'll see, especially in slower periods, Harry Potter at the top of the list. There's always lots of kid books. We see classics like 1984 as well. So it indicates that a lot of product is being moved here, which is certainly good news. How good? Well, I think that requires a bit more of an examination. A user on the Force.net boards, and I'll link to their post down below, actually went through and examined a history of New York Times placements for Star Wars books, and there are a few interesting takeaways. First of all, I'm kind of surprised to see that The Rise of Skywalker never reached #1, and you actually have to go back to 2018 for a Star Wars book that did hit #1, and that was Thrawn Alliances, a book which I thought ultimately was pretty disappointing. But then when it comes to canon, besides for that, you have to go all the way back to The Force Awakens in 2016 for another book which debuted at #1. That was, of course, the Alan Dean Foster novelization. And yeah, that's it for Star Wars canon 2 books which have either debuted or placed at #1, so that tells me that Light of the Jedi is selling very well. We don't know exact units, but it seems like Lucasfilm has done a good job of building up hype for the next generation of storytelling. I'm not going to belabor this point though, because I do think looking into numbers is not the most useful situation, especially where we don't know the gross numbers, where we're in the middle of the pandemic, where the New York Times list is already kind of weird with some separation between hardcover books and regular releases and more. All I will say is that the books sales-wise definitely have not flopped, and just subjectively I've also seen more hype around this book than I would as a content creator for normal publications. I have a lot more people in my YouTube comments asking me about the High Republic. I've seen a lot more push as well from Disney and Star Wars. They've got a web show for the High Republic coming out. They released a trailer. They really seem to be pushing marketing in overdrive, at least on a book scale. So all the right factors and indicators are there for at least short-term success, but I think whether long-term success comes relates more to the quality of the storytelling in this universe. And I think there are positives and negatives for the High Republic. First of all, at least Light of the Jedi, which is written by Charles Soule, is very well written, especially for a Star Wars book. I would compare that with something like Aftermath, which was a bit more of a slog to get through. There are tons of times that Star Wars books have interesting ideas or tell tell a good Star Wars story, but aren't particularly well written. This was not that case. It was very technically well done, I would think. My main problems just come from the story being told. The good side is that the universe being set up in the High Republic is an interesting one. The High Republic, in Light of the Jedi, actually does a really good job with world building, and that was one thing that I was a little bit surprised by. A random example is how they lay out the military of the Republic. The Republic in the High Republic era is still demilitarized, as they are by the time of the Clone Wars, until they get all those ships and clones and don't really think about it. So how they get forces when they need to is they essentially conscript sector forces from wealthy star systems. That's a good example of world building. I think the way that Jedi are handled is interesting, and I do like the idea that these books, at least at the beginning, are very hopeful. The High Republic is at its zenith, as are the Jedi, and we'll definitely see them start to decline, I'm sure, until we reach their Clone Wars era point where the Jedi Order and the Republic have both become sort of tainted by corruption and everything else. So that's the good. I'd also say that some of the characters I think are well done. Bel Zedaphon and Avar Kriss and some of the other Jedi are interesting and make for good characters, but the first book especially is way too broad. Pretty much everyone that I've spoken to has had this issue. They attempt to introduce far too many Jedi characters. The book itself is focused way too much on action instead of slowing down and kind of enjoying this new era, and ultimately that was a big mistake. If you haven't read the book, how it works is there's this giant disaster that I won't explore too much, and the book is basically responding to this disaster and trying to figure out how it happened and how to stop it from happening again in the future. Most of the time is spent with Jedi teams or with the new enemy, the Nihil, that's how it's pronounced in the audiobook, and it's always just go, go, go. And there are probably 5 or 6 different perspectives that we get pretty consistently throughout the book. I think a much better approach would have been to focus on 1 or 2 pair of Jedi, maybe Avar Kriss and Bel, and then focus on what they're doing, but also have flashback sequences. Maybe show what it was like to be a youngling in that era, or what it's like just in the life of an average Republic citizen, because that is all stuff that is sorely lacking from this book. And it also means that there aren't as many characters that are truly interesting, at least based on my opinion, that I would like for a new beginning to a multimedia project. That's an issue. They should have put more time into making a few characters that, as we're getting used to the whole story, we could latch on to. I personally also think the fundamental way the Great Disaster plays out is super uninteresting and ends up being pretty unsatisfying. I'm not going to needlessly go into spoilers here, but the initial idea I thought was interesting and the mystery around it is interesting, but they end up answering everything by the end of the book, and the way that they choose to go about setting up the disaster itself ends up being probably the least interesting route they could take. And I think the Nihil, which are right now at least the main enemy to the Republic, are also kinda lame. Although the writing in Light of the Jedi is generally good, I think the way the Nihil are written is not good. It's very blunt. They're basically space bikers. They're always listening to metal music. They're all about themselves. It's just not very interesting, and with maybe the exception of one character, there's not a lot of complexity in there or nuance or anything that would make me find them interesting. Some of the Nihil dialogue is just outright cringeworthy, to be honest, and I'm hoping that they're just a temporary villain, which could be possible, and that as we move into future books, we'll have different arcs and we'll move past the Nihil threat. Light of the Jedi also doesn't do a good job, in my opinion, of setting up interest in future novels. We learn about, and to put this in simplistic terms, the leader of the Nihil, and we get some mystery regarding his past. There's no indication in this book like where the next novel will go. I don't think there's a lot that left me super interested in reading book number 2, so I can see that hurting sales of subsequent novels, although I don't see that as a huge strike against the time period or the new project itself. To put it simply, I guess my main disappointment is that I wanted Light of the Jedi as the first book for this huge undertaking from Lucasfilm to really impress me. I wanted to immediately want to read more. I wanted it to be one of the best Star Wars canon books, and I think that's what they really needed to do, and they just didn't. At the end of the day, for me, Light of the Jedi, even ignoring all of the pressure of being book 1 in the High Republic, was just a C Star Wars novel. Mid-range, there are certainly many better Star Wars canon books. The Alphabet Squadron books are miles ahead of this, as is Lost Stars and the Thrawn novels, and that's ultimately just really disappointing. So with that said, I'm not feeling too confident about the future of the High Republic, especially if this is the best we could put into the first book. That being said, it could certainly still be saved, and I think saved is too harsh of a word because I'm just talking about some of my issues with it. But for me anyway, it could be saved by a good story that is told through multiple books, and if there's a good overarching plot, that's more than enough to make up for the weaknesses of the first novel. So is the High Republic going to fail? No, I don't think so. I don't think the sales point to that. I think the fact that the writers definitely seem to know what's going on and are coordinating and have a big plan and are technically proficient will help it achieve at least a baseline standard of success, and what that means is comics, novels, etc. for the next few years. But the more interesting question is, will it ever achieve the lofty heights that it could as a new era of Star Wars expanded universe storytelling? I'm not sure. The first novel could have blown me away and it just didn't. I think fundamentally the main way the conflict is set up right now is not very interesting, and I think that hurts the potential for storytelling moving forward. However, if this is just one arc of a much longer series, which it probably is, or if they've got some stuff hidden up their sleeve, then yeah, we could maybe have interest in the High Republic be generated to the point where the Acolyte TV show more heavily interacts with the stories rather than just being set in the timeline, or we get a movie or a video game or whatever else. So there's still the potential there. It wasn't bad enough that I'm not interested. I'm definitely going to read book number 2. I might check out some of the comics and stuff, but I also don't think success at this point is guaranteed. This, however, has all just been my opinion. I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Did you love Light of the Jedi? Are you really pumped for the High Republic? There's no right or wrong answer. I'm not looking to generate positivity or negativity here. I'm just looking to hear what you think. But that's all for me today, guys. I hope you have a good one. Until next time, be safe, and may the Force be with you.